Welcome back to our channel. Today we dive into a story that is making waves across the Middle East and around the globe. The United States, Israel's strongest ally for decades, appears to be making a significant shift in its military posture toward Tel Aviv. This sudden change has not only surprised Israel but also left many Arab allies of Washington in shock. According to economist and political analyst Richard Wolff, this could be the beginning of a major transformation in U.S. foreign policy, one with serious consequences for the entire region. For years, American military support for Israel has been seen as untouchable. Billions of dollars in military aid, advanced weaponry, and unwavering political backing at the United Nations have defined the U.S.-Israel partnership. But now, reports suggest that Washington is quietly reassessing the scale and form of its support. The shift may not be a complete break, but even a partial adjustment is enough to send shockwaves throughout the Middle East. Richard Wolff, known for his critical views on U.S. foreign and economic policy, argues that this change is not just about military strategy. He believes it reflects deeper cracks in America's global dominance and growing frustration with the political costs of defending Israel at all costs. According to Wolff, the U.S. can no longer ignore the economic burdens, the domestic political divisions, and the diplomatic isolation that come with its unconditional support for Tel Aviv. To understand why this moment is so significant, we need to look at the background. The U.S. has long viewed Israel as its most reliable partner in the Middle East, a region filled with instability, oil politics, and rival superpower interests. Since the 1970s, the alliance has grown tighter, especially in terms of military cooperation. Israel receives about $3.8 billion annually in U.S. military aid, not to mention access to cutting-edge defense technology. American troops have also conducted joint exercises with Israeli forces, and Washington has provided political cover for Israel during conflicts with Palestinians, Hezbollah, and even Iran. But in recent years, this relationship has come under strain. Washington's Arab allies, particularly in the Gulf, have repeatedly warned that unconditional American support for Israel undermines their own security and public opinion at home. When Israel launches military operations in Gaza or Lebanon, U.S. backing often sparks anger in Arab capitals. For years, American leaders brushed off these concerns, confident that their Arab allies, Saudi Arabia, the UAE, Jordan, and others, would remain dependent on U.S. security guarantees. Now, however, the balance is shifting. Several Arab countries have begun exploring closer ties with China and Russia, diversifying their security and economic partnerships. At the same time, the American public is showing signs of fatigue. Younger generations, especially within the Democratic Party, are increasingly critical of Israel's policies toward Palestinians. Protests across U.S. cities during recent conflicts have placed additional pressure on lawmakers. Richard Wolff explains that the U.S. leadership is caught in a difficult position. On one side is a long-standing alliance with Israel, backed by powerful lobbies and historical commitments. On the other side is a changing global landscape where America's traditional dominance is being challenged. If Washington continues to back Israel unconditionally, it risks alienating Arab partners, weakening its influence in the Middle East, and even accelerating the shift toward multipolarity in world affairs. So, what exactly has changed? Reports suggest that the Pentagon is reconsidering the automatic flow of advanced weaponry to Israel. Certain arms shipments have been delayed, and U.S. military officials are reportedly urging Israel to exercise restraint in its regional operations. Washington is also reviewing joint defense projects that were once considered untouchable. While the U.S. has not cut aid altogether, these small steps mark a noticeable departure from business as usual. For Arab allies, this is both a surprise and an opportunity. Many Gulf leaders are stunned that Washington would risk upsetting Israel. Yet at the same time, they see a chance to push for a more balanced U.S. role in the region. If America reduces its military commitments to Israel, Arab states could leverage this shift to demand greater recognition of Palestinian rights and perhaps even push for a revival of peace negotiations. However, Richard Wolff warns that this situation is far from stable. He argues that U.S. foreign policy is often reactive rather than strategic. This means that while Washington may be signaling a shift today, it could easily reverse course tomorrow if domestic politics demand it. Already, pro-Israel voices in Congress are calling for stronger guarantees to Tel Aviv, warning that any sign of weakness could embolden Iran or other adversaries. Meanwhile, Israel is closely watching these developments. For decades, Israeli leaders have relied on American backing as a cornerstone of their security doctrine. The idea that Washington might hesitate or place conditions on its support is a deeply unsettling prospect for Tel Aviv. Israeli officials are already lobbying behind closed doors to secure firm reassurances from Washington. Arab allies are also cautious. While they welcome any reduction in Washington's blind support for Israel, they know the U.S. remains a critical partner. No Arab state is ready to completely sever ties with Washington, but many are quietly strengthening relations with other powers such as Beijing and Moscow. This multipolar shift could, in the long run, reduce America's ability to dictate terms in the Middle East. Richard Wolff's analysis emphasizes the economic angle. He notes that the U.S. is stretched thin, with massive defense commitments across Europe, Asia, and now the Middle East. Maintaining an open-ended military guarantee to Israel is costly not only in dollars but also in political capital. With rising domestic inequality, debt concerns, and polarization at home, the American public may not tolerate endless military spending abroad. In Wolff's view, this is part of a broader trend, the decline of U.S. hegemony. For decades, Washington dictated the rules of global politics, confident that its allies had no choice but to follow. Today, countries have alternatives. The rise of BRICS, the growing influence of China, and the resilience of Russia despite sanctions all point to a new era. In this context, unconditional support for Israel looks increasingly unsustainable. So, what does the future hold? If the U.S. continues down this path, we could see a gradual recalibration of American policy in the Middle East. Instead of acting as Israel's unconditional backer, Washington might position itself as a mediator, balancing ties between Israel and Arab allies. This could open space for renewed diplomacy, though it would face fierce resistance from hardline voices in both Israel and the U.S. Congress. On the other hand, if the backlash in Washington grows too strong, the U.S. might swing back to an even harder pro-Israel stance. That would deepen divisions with Arab allies and accelerate the shift toward a multipolar order where U.S. influence continues to decline. In conclusion, the reported U.S. military shift on Israel marks a turning point in Middle Eastern geopolitics. For Arab allies, it is both shocking and full of potential. For Israel, it raises serious concerns about its long-term security strategy. And for the United States, it reflects the growing contradictions of trying to maintain global dominance in an increasingly multipolar world. As Richard Wolff reminds us, history shows that empires rarely decline in a straight line, they lurch, adjust, and stumble along the way. Today's developments may be just one step in that process, but they are a powerful reminder that the old certainties of American foreign policy can no longer be taken for granted. Stay tuned as we continue to follow this evolving story.